We have more than a quorum. Howdy, Emily. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, January 16th, 2026. You are watching the Committee on General and Housing. This afternoon, we're going to introduce and have some walkthroughs, and in one case, I believe, we'll see a vote. So I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed legislative counsel particularly for labor issues, Sophie Zatny.
Good afternoon, I'm Sophie Zatny for the Office of Legislative Counsel, and I'm just waiting to pull up the bills because my understanding is you don't have those in front of you. So just give me 1 second.
Are we going in numerical order?
Yeah, we're going to start with 532.
Great.
That would be easier for me.
Me too. That's how they're listed on our webpage too. They're linked up.
This is the mandatory retirement bill, and it's the one at the request of legislative counsel that I introduced and know nothing about. How about that for honesty online?
There we go. No, thanks.
You know what? I'm going to ask Lenora to act as our committee clerk in the absence of Mary,
Okay, happy to.
because this one is one we may bring to a vote. Okay.
Right, and this is a pretty straightforward bill. The goal here would be to repeal a statutory provision that we currently have in the Fair Employment Practices Act that permits the mandatory retirement of college professors at age 70 years of age, which has actually been illegal at the federal level since 1994 under the American Age Discrimination Act. So it's been on our statute books. It's periodically being tweaked, you know, through technical corrections, like fixing the language or whatever, which suggests that it's actually a real bill that you know, that's in force. And I did look and see, and it's sort of cited as being, you know, an active bill. So I think it's misleading to people to think that actually it's in effect. So my request to the chair was to simply go ahead and repeal it. So yeah, this was language. It used to be under the Age Discrimination and Employment Act at the federal level. It used to be that there were a lot of mandatory retirement ages, and as time's gone on and people have figured out that, you know, just because you're older doesn't necessarily mean you can't do certain things. A lot of those restrictions have been lifted. And this was one that was passed in 1986, but didn't go into effect until 1994. So happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Joe had a good question.
I answered my own question. But thank you.
Well, in other words, it's statutory, not the federal prohibition is statutory. Is there any constitutional law on this subject?
It's under the federal law. So again, as this committee knows, generally on employment issues, the federal law sets the floor for things, and then states can, you know, be more permissive, more generous above that. So because the federal law would preempt this statute, there's a direct conflict. It wouldn't work. Yeah, there's nothing specific, I don't think constitutionally.
There's no judge-made law that says that age discrimination is that retirement ages as a general matter are discriminatory and prohibited.
Well, generally you can't discriminate on the basis of age. You can't say, you know, I'm picking the younger candidate because, you know, you're old and you won't understand the technology, or you haven't got new ideas, or whatever stereotype you might come up with. There are still some retirement ages. So for example, in law enforcement, there are retirement ages. Being a commercial pilot, there are retirement ages. So, you know, where there's science that supports, you know, with age, your ability to do that particular position decreases, then those are supported. But for college professors, that's not the case. What actually happened was in 1986, there was a fight about this. And the EEOC was actually asked to do a study, a survey on the cognitive decline of college professors, and they never did it. So the amendment went into effect in 1994. So
But
So-
because of proficiency in law enforcement,
right, so there are some areas where you can. There are some narrow exceptions to the general rule that you can't have mandatory retirement ages.
Statutory exemption.
Right.
That was my question earlier, and it's called a bona fide occupational qualification.
Oh,
And it's generally around public safety.
okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, it looks specific to tenured faculty. It is, so what, do they still have a mechanism or, if,
This was just allowing employers to require a tenured
Right.
faculty to retire at the age of 70. Because otherwise with tenure, it's sort of a job for life.
right?
So this
So
was a permissive statute, so. you
is there
couldn't-
still some provision, so if somebody reaches 98 and their student, I don't want to, no, I can't remember, but if somebody is beyond their ability to do the job well, do they still have some way, means to?
Right, if you're not if you have job performance
Okay.
issues, then obviously you
That's,
can do
okay.
something. It just can't be you're 70, therefore you're out.
Right, gotcha. Okay,
You could be a really smart 90-year-old.
yep, makes sense.
But if you start losing your faculties and your performance goes down, then, for performance reasons, they can say
Okay.
that this is
At any age.
pretty much it, right.
So it's now called, what did you say, Joe? A bona fide occupational what?
Bona fide occupational qualification. Yeah, thank you.
That's cops, firefighters, et cetera.
Right,
Yeah.
and there are some specific provisions around that.
Oh, there are specific occupations called out in federal law.
Right, and state law. I believe we have one for the law enforcement.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because we have one here for the chief of police, and I was like, wait a minute. Because I was like, why, I don't understand how that works, but now that you say that, it's because, I guess I never thought of it in that capacity on the type of job having to do with, the decline, the age decline and the qualifications, because I was under the impression, I was like, you would want someone with more experience to be in a leadership role. But I guess when you put it in that capacity, it makes sense.
Yeah, and things like commercial pilots, just
Yeah.
your vision isn't as good. I mean, just we all know, right?
Yeah.
At age, there are some deficits, but some maybe aren't critical to your job performance, but some are. Yeah. It looks like.
Mark?
Emily,
Hi,
Hey.
just a question, this, it looks like, does this apply to or adjunct professors, or this is just?
No, the statute specifically is for tenured professors, because
Yeah.
again, otherwise there's no, I'm sure the thought was, we have these people that have tenure for life,
Right.
we should be
Oh,
able to.
true, right, yeah, because I know some adjunct professors that are real old,
yeah,
And there's-
Yeah, that's.
they're
that's
still
fine.
good, they're
And-
still all right,
right, yeah.
And this
Okay.
was really just permissive, it was just allowing people
yeah,
to have a mandatory retirement policy, but again, that's been not permitted under federal law since 1994.
well, glad that we're, closing that loophole then.
Is there any questions by the committee? I think, given the simplicity of this, it might be good just to get it out. Is there, I guess I'll move up. Yeah, go ahead.
Prior to that,
Yeah.
knowing that this is as simple as it is, just curious if people want to use their day of voting. Because we have 3
Not
members.
really,
That's kind of
But
my
it-
thought.
thanks,
know
Joe,
what?
I thought of that earlier this afternoon, I was like, dang it, but it is, I guess if I have to, I have
No, you
to.
don't have to.
We can delay the vote.
Well, we can either delay the vote, or we've got 6 of us here.
Right, but they might not want to be reflected as
2,
not having.
3, 4, 5.
Oh,
six.
right, because I am technically here. maybe could we vote Tuesday early morning or
Sure, of
something?
course. Okay,
Is that cool?
absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
Well, yeah,
Thanks,
a
Joe.
6:05.
Yeah.
Oh, snap.
That's love.
Thanks, Joe.
Looking out for committee.
I think Joe should report this bill.
That's right. I have to assign it to somebody to report. Joe.
He hasn't voted yet. He hasn't cast his vote.
Yeah, it was-
Oh, now I vote against it.
Is it legal for us to vote against it if it's not? Like, if the statute is illegal,
Of course you can.
essentially, can we
There's
vote
no-
against it?
Yeah, of course you can.
So. You won't
Okay,
get taken
so
away in
I'll tell you
cuffs.
what, let's just calendar it for when we think. But,
Tuesday after.
Emily, do you have any time you won't be here that you can anticipate now?
Or Debbie.
No, I'm back next week all the days. So
Okay, and
whatever.
Debbie, do you have any sense, Debbie, when you might want to actually be back in person?
A lot has to do with PT because they haven't really taught me how to use PT has to teach me how to use the walker with my walking boot. So, once that happens, I see myself coming more often to committee,
Yeah.
but it's not going to happen Tuesday.
I don't think. Yeah, I think we'll schedule it. Let's schedule it for like Friday or something. And if she isn't here, we can postpone it even
Well,
further.
I'm trying to be there on Friday because
Great.
I'm presenting, right? The 22nd, am I presenting? Am I on the agenda?
Thursday.
Oh, that's Thursday?
Yeah, but we'll work around your schedule, okay? We can move things around. And I hate to see you use your remote vote for this kind of a bill. It's nothing, so.
No offense against your bill, by the way.
I didn't know, I feel a lot of possessive sense in this bill.
Oh, that's it.
Okay, so next,
You asked me just to have a walk through on H518, which Representative Casey, as the sponsor, did an introduction to. And this is to create a position in the Vermont Labor Relations Office to create a mediator position that would serve public and private sector collective bargaining units. And I did want to just let this committee know this is a short form, but there is language in S-173 in front of Senate Economic Development that fleshes this out more, that has the statutory language and an appropriation in it.
so can you, I'm sure you're familiar with S-173.
Yes.
You want to tell us about what's in this, what's using 173 as a guide, what's involved here?
So I'm going to stop sharing that. Pull up. S-173 has other stuff in it as well, but it also includes the mediation.
By the way, is Chris Taylor? Okay.
Apologies for the fast forward here. That was
Also, if you can make it a little bigger, you get there.
better. Is that big enough?
Just a little bigger would be great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So this would provide, this is in the State Employee Labor Relations Act. And this would just add into a section in that act that talks about the Vermont Labor Relations Board and, its how it's set up and organized. So this would provide, again, that the Secretary of Administration would give additional space to the Vermont Labor Relations Board if they add a position in. As you may know, the Vermont Labor Relations Board only has two positions. One is the full-time executive director and the other is a part-time clerk. So it's a very lean and mean operation. So this would add in a mediator position to provide free mediation services to both public and private sector collective bargaining units and employers once they reach impasse in collective bargaining. And then it has the appropriation would be to add a full-time permanent position, and then the current placeholder amount for that is $115,000 to cover the salary and benefits. Judith Dillon, who's the executive director of the Vermont Labor Relations Board, testified yesterday that if they do need additional space, that would be an added cost, because I guess they have to pay the Agency of Administration for the space that they use. The Vermont Labor Relations Board is an independent, agency within state government. So that's the overview.
Does this contemplate that this would be an employee as opposed to an
Yes.
independent contractor?
This would, yes, it contemplates an employee, and I can, so where this is coming from, and I know you've asked me to come in next week to talk about things that have happened at the federal level that are impacting, Vermont labor and employment issues. The Federal Mediation Conciliation Service, FMCS, is a small federal independent agency that provides mediation and conciliation services to private sector employees covered by the National Labor Relations Act. And if you remember from last session, we have 7 state labor relations acts, so they're not covered by the federal National Labor Relations Act. We have 7 public sector primarily acts here in Vermont. But the FMCS out of the Albany office, for many years, I don't know how many years, but as long as I'm aware, have been providing free mediation services to unions and employers in Vermont, including those covered by our state statutes. And last March, through an executive order, the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service was cut dramatically by 95%. And so they went from around 143 full-time national mediators down to about 4 or 5. So there have been court cases, injunctions, et cetera, around that. And the agency is being built back up again. But providing free mediation services to public sector employees is not part of the FMCS's statutory obligation under federal law. So I would anticipate that even if the FMCS is able to be rebuilt, which again, I'm not entirely sure that will happen, but if it does, my anticipation is that they would be restricted to what they're statutorily required to do by federal law. And that would not include providing this free mediation service to public sector employees and labor unions here in Vermont. You can certainly have testimony, folks come in to talk about the value of having that free mediation service. Mediation is expensive. Having the free service has been enormously valuable to both parties. I would anticipate you would hear testimony on both sides saying how valuable having that free mediation service is. Having a neutral party that can come in when you've reached an impasse or you're just struggling in a negotiation. And even if you don't always resolve a dispute through the mediation, what often happens is you may start with 12 contentious issues, and with a mediator, you can get it down to 2 issues.
Mm.
And that really helps alleviate the workload on the Vermont Labor Relations Board, again, just as 1.5 employees. It means that everything doesn't land up on their plate where they've then got to have hearings, et cetera, because the parties aren't able to resolve their bargaining issues. So this what's proposed in S-173 is that the mediation service would be provided to private sector employees as well. So not just those covered by our 7 public labor relations acts, but also private sector employees here in Vermont. So for example, the UVM Medical Center and the nurses, right? You have, they bargain, they run into issues. This would provide and again, before the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service would be involved in trying to resolve that dispute. So this would also be something that would benefit all bargaining units within Vermont, not just public sector. Right now, municipal, under the Municipal Employee Labor Relations Act, if they reach an impasse and need a mediator, they go to the Department of Labor under the statute. And the Department of Labor then usually reaches out to the Vermont Labor Relations Board and says, do you have any mediators we can refer them to? So I think they've also been getting assistance from the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service too, but Judith Dillon didn't have those numbers yesterday. That she
So
mentioned that.
I just want to clarify here. So even if the federal service is rebuilt, you think it will apply only to private sector employees?
Right, because they're under the federal law, the National Labor Relations Act, that covers private sector employees. It does not cover public sector.
Right, which is why we have our 7 different statutes in all their glory.
I would add that when Judith Dillon testified yesterday, she also said that she was aware that for the upcoming fiscal year budget for the FMCS, it's significantly smaller. And so she seemed pessimistic that it would even be rebuilt enough to support the public sector employees as well. But there has been litigation around it. The Southern District of New York at the end of December reversed a policy that FMCS had put in place where they were only going to help very large employers and healthcare employers. They weren't going to help smaller employers. So that got reversed by the Southern District of New York. So again, it's very much in flux. But in terms of looking at a crystal ball, what might happen. And again, this has been a very valuable service, and the free is really important because it means people are willing to involve a mediator much earlier on than otherwise they would.
But the mediator that's being contemplated in this bill would be available to both public, to public, which are not covered, but also private,
Which
are covered. So if it's
Right.
rebuilt, would it be duplicative?
potentially, but it's just not clear when that will happen. I will say the other piece, and this is just from my personal knowledge, is there was a lot of credibility that was given to the FMCS mediators by both sides. Again, there was a huge amount of trust put in the mediators, and because they were all basically fired, those that have a lot of experience and knowledge about Vermont have left and taken other positions. So even if FMCS, the office is restaffed, you've still lost that expertise that they had on Vermont. So this would enable the Vermont Labor Relations Board to have a resource that's here in the state that, can become familiar with the employers and the employees here.
Right. You were saying one thing that you said that the municipal labor relations under that act,
I'm
What
not sure
happens to
why,
the
but
Department of-
if they hit impasse, so normally if under the other acts, if you get to a point of an impasse in collective bargaining, you reach out to the Vermont Labor Relations Board and you say, we've hit impasse, please would you appoint a mediator? And typically what happens, and this is what Judith Dillon testified to yesterday, typically what happens is the parties will say, we've reached impasse, please would you appoint this person, from the FMCS as our mediator. And so, but for whatever reason, and I don't know the historical reason why, but under the Municipal Employee Relations Act, if they hit impasse, instead of reaching out to the Labor Relations Board, they reach out to the Department of Labor.
which in turn does what?
Reaches out
Which
to
is
the
what,
Relations
which is
Board.
what Judith Dillon said, they then reach out to the Labor Relations Board to say, do you have a list of mediators? Who would you recommend?
So that's not written in statute, that's just the
That's just in
practice.
practice how they've done it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask, do you have a sense generally when there's a loss of finding a mediator,
whether one side ends up being more empowered than another? Does it create an imbalance that just creates awful impasses, or does the scale end up getting tipped in one
I'm
direction or another?
not aware of it causing an impasse that way. Typically, what would happen with a mediator position is that if you were paying, the parties would typically just split the cost 50-50 and any expenses that are related with it. So, both parties would equally bear the cost of it.
Right, but historically, when you're trying to reach, you know, when these two sides have conflicting goals, if the employer versus employees, like, does it create an imbalance to no longer have a mediator who is a third party that can, is it?
I think it's mutually beneficial for both parties to, you know, you get, once you've reached impasse, it's because you've, the parties have gotten to a point where they just can't make progress on their own. And so, and sometimes they're still having collaborative, helpful conversations, but it's just having that additional person that can then work with each side to explore some possibilities. So often mediators will do supposals, you know, what if the other side were to come in and suggest something like this, would that be of interest? And so they can do things that the parties themselves can't do without sort of displaying weakness or a vulnerability in a particular way.
Mhm.
So it's a way to explore possible resolutions, but going through a third party.
But both sides have to request, under this bill, would both sides have to request the mediation?
This just provides that when they reach impasse, so when you reach impasse, both sides have agreed that they're not able to.
So it's not as if one side can say, well, we've reached impasse and therefore a mediator is signed. You have to have both. The other saying, no, actually, we haven't. I don't want a mediator. There's not going to be a mediator.
This doesn't change that. This doesn't have any
Right.
impact on the current statute regarding
It's not like the situation where there's a formal declaration of impasse and a special master is appointed. That's a different process, right?
Yeah, and so my understanding is that impasse at the federal level under the National Labor Relations Act is a much more significant thing, sort of relations have completely broken down, you know, the parties can't communicate. That's not the way it functions under our labor relations statutes here in Vermont. Often the parties can still be negotiating and be like, all right, we can't agree on
Right.
this one issue, so let's go ahead and get a mediator
Right.
scheduled, you know, because of everyone's schedule. Let's see if we can get them scheduled for 3 weeks' time when we next meet to talk about that issue. So it's not like there's been a complete breakdown. And, you know, so usually it's, you know, of mutual benefit to both parties. Like we've reached gridlock on this particular issue. We can still talk about other issues, but let's see if we can get a mediator to help us get over the, you know, this particular issue and move forward.
If I may, I don't know if you could see my hand.
No, go ahead. It's,
Oh.
you know what? It's hard to see your hand, so just
That's
interrupt
what
like
I
this.
thought, so I'll just say something.
Stop sharing.
Sophie answered Rep Dodge's question perfectly. I didn't know if that was something that she could answer, but it seems like you did. I was just gonna reiterate that point, and that this is as I forgot, I'm also a co-sponsor of this bill. But Rep Casey pointed out yesterday that this is really for both parties, and it's really to help. You know, I think mediation is really can be beneficial and can save time and money in other ways. So, but yes, it is for both parties beneficial and equal. But yeah, Sophie answered. I had my hand up before, but Sophie answered it perfectly. Rep Dodge's question. Thank you.
Nora.
I was just gonna say that it just, I feel like when we create this kind of position, I just think about the boom that it, you know, like an interesting
creative, accomplished individual is gonna have a role to play. You know, when we come to conflict, it's just, I think this is in the public interest.
One of the things I like about this is that the Labor Relations Board's lack of staff, is something that we've heard about
Yes,
over the last couple of years, and there are several bills that are on our wall, which are basically sort of workarounds, you know, the proposing that people can do things outside of the Labor Relations Board by contract rather than through it, solely because of the delays and the assertion that they can't keep up. And it seems to me this bill is, and we haven't been very effective in, well, let's put it this way, efforts to increase the staff size have not been successful. So it seems to me this is one way of perhaps lightening their load indirectly through hiring a mediator.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. I think that's the intent.
Any other questions about 548 before we move on?
Yeah, procedural. So given that 173 is in play, where does that leave 548?
What we would have to do, and we can do it if we want now.
Yeah.
We can when we have short form bill, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, Vice Counsel. The next step, if we wanted to have a bill, we have two ways to go. One is we can do nothing, leave it on the wall and wait for 173 to come across. Or we can mark it up ourselves. And the way we would do that is we would instruct our legislative council to create the bill for us, correct? So, and I don't think we even need to do that by motion. We just need to do it by sense of the body. Is that correct?
My understanding is, yeah, that it's the committee votes to have it move forward, so I think,
We would have
I
to
don't know how
vote.
formal it needs to be, but yes, that.
Well, we would have, can we do it by straw poll? Can't we just do it by sense of the committee?
It doesn't have to,
request.
I don't want her to have to use a vote.
Yeah.
oh, it's not that type of vote. It's not, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not like
okay.
an official vote with the clerk. It's
Right.
just a hand of committee to take it off the wall. And again, that doesn't mean we're gonna work on it even more, but it means then we're going to the next phase.
Which is having you insert that link.
Okay, so what is the sense of the committee? Should we ask Sophie to turn this into a bill?
Can I comment without voting yet? I'm trying to think of whether this is just busy work for you or whether there's if the Senate is already introducing it as a long form, what's the benefit of us creating it as a long form too? If just that we don't know whether it'll make it across, make it out, etc. Like this might be the least
other bill-
sad of the issues or, controversial.
Has other pieces in it, and it might have.
That
other
might be
pieces
more
added to it.
controversial.
It might, yeah, so.
Okay.
This would
Yeah.
be just a standalone piece, and as far as, I mean, the amount of additional work is minimal, because I would really essentially
Cut
just
and
take
paste.
pieces right out of that though.
Okay, yeah, then I'm totally for that.
Yeah. Well done.
Gosh, we might get stuff done.
What about the other members of the committee? How do you feel about it? Should we ask Sophie to proceed to turn this into a long form bill that we would then take up?
Well, we don't even necessarily have to take it up, but at least
we
then
don't.
it's in play more
Take
than,
testimony.
right. It really is just another step. And I will shock the committee that I would like to do that.
It's not likely to be 80 pages. of legislation.
It'll be fractionally longer than. the
4
short
pages.
form. Maybe 2 pages.
Then, so let's get it in hand.
Tom will never vote for it if it's shorter than 80 pages.
I'm not sure I can spend it out that long.
Other members of the committee, how do you feel about it?
Take the next step.
Debbie,
Take the next step. Yeah.
Joe, what's your feeling about it?
Whatever the committee would like.
Okay. I think the consensus is that you should, whatever the committee would like, and since the committee apparently would like it, you should do it. Okay. So we're going to move to a bill. The long form bill.
548. It keeps its number, right?
Yeah.
Is that big enough?
Okay. Chris? Maybe we should go to 661 since Chris is here, and then we'll come back to, how's that? I hate to make him sit here. We'll come back
I'll
to,
set aside whatever you all
want to do.
Yeah.
get up there. Take a seat. Well, both of you.
We thought all of Milton was gonna come.
Well, I can't coordinate it when I'm in Milton. I definitely can't coordinate it when I'm down here.
Okay, so,
Milton cool.
Oh, do you want me to put it up on the screen for you?
yeah, and I think,
Much here.
Chris,
Yes,
this bill, you haven't been here with this bill, right?
no,
Okay. So we're gonna introduce it and then do a walkthrough,
okay,
okay?
that's fine.
It's been the policy of our committee, we introduce every bill that comes in,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I don't think I hope so.
But also, we thought
But we're
that this
doing a
was,
walkthrough too.
this, and then the next step usually, there's a lot of bills, not a lot, but a good number of bills that are introduced here that are not, we don't do walkthroughs. But we felt with this bill, we should move to a walkthrough as well. So why don't you tell us about your thoughts about this bill, why you did it, anything you want to, in just a brief introduction.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the time. H661 makes two straightforward updates to Vermont's presumptive cancer statute for firefighters. First, it adds cancers of the larynx, pharynx, and trachea to the existing presumptive cancer list. Lung cancer is already included in statute. These additional cancers affect tissues that are part of the same respiratory pathway and are exposed to the same smoke, carcinogens, and toxic byproducts firefighters encounter on the job. From a logical standpoint, it makes sense that contaminants capable of causing lung cancer would also impact other organs along that same pathway. This change brings the statute into better alignment with how exposure actually occurs in the field. Second, the bill removes the requirement that a firefighter be under the age of 65 in order for a cancer to be presumed work-related. That age cap appears arbitrary. Firefighters do not stop carrying the effects of their occupational exposure when they turn 65. And cancers related to that exposure may not present until years later. Excuse me. Maintaining an age cutoff risks denying the coverage based solely on when a diagnosis occurs rather than whether the disease is connected to the service. Importantly, this bill does not remove the existing safeguard that limits eligibility to cancers diagnosed within 10 years of a firefighter's last injurious exposure. That requirement remains in place and continues to provide a reasonable and defensible connection between employment and illness. I appreciate the ability to introduce H661 and hope that it can be moved forward to better support those who risk their health to keep us safe. Thank you.
Questions for Chris before we go through a walkthrough? Please.
Very, very briefly, did this come from a constituent
This
or lived experience from some
yes,
of the folks?
this unfortunately, our town has been affected, our fire department has been affected greatly by cancer diagnosis in the last several years. So this
What
change.
town is that?
Milton,
Milton.
yes. So this change came between conversations with myself and our chief of fire department in alignment with what's happened in our town over the recent years.
What is it? You mentioned the word presumptive. How does this work? In other words,
So
it's a question of whether it was caused by.
correct, and you might have a better, yes.
Okay, all right, we'll wait till the walkthrough.
But yes, it's presumed to have been caused by their job.
Okay, Debbie, and then Emily.
My question has to do with, is this generational? Like, is it showing up in their offspring? Or is it isolated just to that one generation?
I'm personally unaware of if it's generational or not.
Thank
I
you.
think. Yes, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much for bringing this bill forward. I really support it and I hope we take it up. This may be a question for Sophie, but is this for, since we do have a lot of various firefighter bills in our committee, is this for volunteer firefighters or folks who are full-time firefighters?
I don't think it makes I don't think it designates.
It's for workers' compensation, so.
Okay.
Employed by or who volunteer for the department on line
great.
12 of page 3.
But it's compensation, right? So
Okay, well, we may want to discuss that. My dad was a volunteer firefighter growing up and I saw the amazing work that he did, but I maybe something to talk about more. And thank you so much though for bringing this forward.
thanks, Chris. Sophie, you want to do a little walkthrough? Chris, you can stay there if you want, or if you want to get out of here, you can do that. That's okay.
Nothing big going on the education committee.
This committee, are you?
It's in education.
Education.
No, like backwater, right, yeah.
Safe drive.
See you guys. Make sure your father stays in line and don't let him speed.
So again, Representative Taylor did an excellent job. The two key things that this bill does. So I did want to just add,
Yeah, set the stage regulatorily. What are we?
right, so this is in the workers' compensation statute. So the question about generational, this is dealing with individuals that are working, right? So this is a workers' compensation. And then you had asked about the presumption. So, and I will just say the definitions are incredibly lengthy in the workers' compensation statute, but the one dealing specifically with firefighters is that because scientifically firefighters are diagnosed with cancer and die from cancer at a higher rate than the general population, there's built into our workers' compensation statute a presumption that if you develop certain types of cancer while you are a firefighter or within a certain period of time of being a firefighter, that then is a compensable workers' compensation injury. So it just expedites the workers' compensation process. Normally if you have cancer in a different situation, you'd have to establish the causal connection between your work and the cancer. So again, as Representative Taylor explained, what this is doing is, we'll talk about the 65-year-old thing first of all. So just going through, it says who dies or has a disability from a cancer listed in subdivision 3, which we'll get to. Firefighters shall be presumed to have had the cancer as a result of exposure to conditions in the line of duty, unless it's shown by a preponderance of the evidence that the cancer was not caused by non-service connected risk factors or non-service connected exposure.
But the
And then
cancer was caused by non-service.
So
Well,
unless,
Unless it's shown, so
Yes.
unless,
Right, later on it says smoking.
right, so there are some guardrails around this. It's not just any firefighter that has any cancer, that's a workers' comp injury, right? There are some guardrails.
it's got to be caused by work.
But this gives a presumption, so then the burden is going to be on the employer or the carrier to establish that, yeah, there's no correlation between this cancer and the work. So again, so the firefighter has undergone initial and subsequent cancer screening evaluations before or while becoming a firefighter, and there was no evidence of cancer. So it's not somebody that's already has a cancer becomes a firefighter. Right, so it's checking that, and then the firefighter was engaged in firefighting duties over a period of at least 5 years in Vermont prior to the diagnosis. And then this is the guardrail that's being removed, which is the firefighters under the age of 65 years, right, at the time of diagnosis. And then it says, as Representative Dodge just noted, the presumption does not apply to any firefighter who's used tobacco products at any time within 10 years of the date of diagnosis. And then it goes through the different kinds of cancer. And again, I did just a very quick bit of research, very rapid, as I was just asked this morning about this bill. So one of the issues, the medical studies that are starting to come out is, I think as Representative Taylor indicated, but larynx, pharynx, and trachea, those are all respiratory issues. And there's a lot more synthetic products in fires. And so they're just much more likely to be cancer-causing agents right now. So again, I didn't do a deep dive on all the medical research or anything, but again, that I think that the language that was used was it's sort of part of the respiratory tract. And again, you have to be diagnosed with the cancer within 10 years of your last active date of employment as a firefighter. And then there's some other provisions in here about maintaining records, et cetera. So those are the two main changes to.
Theodora.
Do firefighters have a maximum age? Paid firefighters?
That is a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I can check.
Because if that was removed, is that kind of the logic too behind, I mean, that you could be older, you could be. Or what, well, in case.
We'll have to check. Yes. I would be surprised if there was an age limit for volunteer firefighter.
You would be surprised?
Yeah. To volunteer, there should be no age limit, in other words.
Well, I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Or guess, yeah. How do they normally prove or disprove that you are or are not a smoker? And do like vapes, like, I don't know, there's all kinds of tobacco products that are not inhaled or.
I don't know how that goes. I would assume there's questionnaires that you complete, and if you lied on it, then there's a penalty if you've lied on it. There are, I think there's either blood or urine tests you can do to see if people have used tobacco. So
But not from 10 years ago. Is
Right,
that
Not
what you
from-
mean?
Probably not from 10 years ago, but yeah, I mean, just like anything, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how that would work.
thanks.
Preponderance of evidence has to indicate a certain bulk of, not just one, can't be just one possibility. It has to be substantial.
I mean, if your crewmates all know you're out the back smoking every time you're off duty, whatever.
Or you weren't able to get life insurance, or your life insurance was very expensive because you were a smoker. I wouldn't know I'm not a smoker.
Yeah, right. I'm not familiar with workers' compensation law very much. I mean, the practice of it. But from what you've said, I assume that the compensation, it depends on your proving that there's a nexus between the work and the illness. How do people establish? Is this usually a major part of the litigation where people are where the employers are fighting back and saying, no, you just had it anyway?
I think it depends on what the nature of the injury is. And there are some injuries, that are expensive to treat, that, you're going to have an employer that's going to push back if they think it's questionable as to whether there's linkage. So, it depends. I mean, sometimes it's pretty straightforward and it's just a question of how long is it going to take for you to, have the shoulder surgery and get back to work or whatever it may be. But these kinds of things where there are cancers or other kinds of diseases that are infected, that are caused more by environmental factors and stuff, I think are just a lot more challenging. And again, employers may dispute them, and then you have to get into the medical evidence and all the rest of it. That's why I think that you have the presumption here is so you don't have to fight about it. If you've got lung cancer, you don't smoke, you've been a firefighter, we're not gonna
Yeah.
quibble about,
I think that's, occupational illnesses would include things like carpal tunnel. You know, it doesn't just happen on a Wednesday afternoon. Oh, look, you've got it. You're typing, you know, back conditions like that are accrued over time. So this would be similar to, you know, other situations, workman's comp already, what's that? And I can imagine some insurance carriers not wanting to cover it as much as employers.
Any other questions by members of the committee of either Sophie or Chris? Yes.
I'm gonna guess, obviously, this is now casting a broader net of people that will be covered, and so I'm just curious whether, I think it's great that we do that. I'm curious whether you know the history of that 65-year mark. Is that very common in other statutes?
I don't know, I can certainly look and see if I can give you more insight on that as to why the 65 came in. Again, it has that other language that it has to be within 10 years, so I think that's a valid point that, you know, because it's when you're diagnosed, I mean, I'd just be speculating, but maybe, you know, you're more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as an older person than as a younger person, so. But I don't know the details of why it was.
This likely to be diagnosed after you were retired.
Yeah,
Still valid.
well, that's now, if we
Right.
get rid of that, that's what we're saying
That's
is
what-
that we're now
Just cutting
including.
it off when you stop.
Right.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
But we're leaving in place the 10 years.
yes.
Right.
Okay,
I got a
Yes.
question. So would this it's just like any other, it's
Debbie,
just,
I see you, but go on.
I just want, oh, I'm sorry, did I
No,
skip
no,
the
no,
queue?
you were first. Go ahead.
Oh. Oh, did I skip the queue? So this is just like, just adding to the already pre-existing thing, so there wouldn't be any insurance implications that were like, are there any possibilities of unintended consequences that could kick back on firefighters by adding, you know what I mean? Like, is there a way that there could be a negative impact? I'm just looking for unintended consequences that
Yeah.
could
I
backfire.
don't think there would be any on the firefighters themselves, I mean.
Not on firefighters.
Right, I mean, I think I mean, to the extent for the employers that are paying for the workers' compensation.
Yeah.
They may have to, you know, pay more for that, so there
Okay.
would be a, you know, to the extent, again, and I don't.
That it may raise their premium or
Right.
something.
Right,
I mean, we might, if we take this up and we have testimony, we might want to get, I don't know, Megan Sullivan or someone
Yeah.
from
See
the,
what the numbers look like.
someone from the chamber.
Jamie Feehan usually is the one that testifies. I'm actually curious why the bill's here, because usually workers' compensation's over down the hall,
Yeah.
Okay,
but usually Jamie Feehan is the one
Well,
that
actually-
testifies on the behalf of
would
Carrie.
this be, why was it referred to us?
I had a little bit of a question of that in my head as well, but I don't know how it operates, so. I didn't know.
Don't they usually do workers' comp next
It's
door?
not really a labor thing, is it because it's specific to
Firefighters.
maybe it's a.
I mean, it is workers' compensation, and usually workers' compensation.
Okay.
over there, it's just down and.
Okay, well, we'll have to see. I don't mind Art having to deal with it. I just want to, I'll ask Marcotte whether there's any problem if we just do it. Debbie,
Well, I mean, cancers grow at different rates, obviously. And, I mean, even 10 years, I mean, I feel like some cancers just take a long time to show their ugly head, so to speak. So-
I feel, oh, sorry. I feel
No,
like,
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I feel like if we take up the bill, these are some of the questions that we could get into but with a while, you know, we're kind of getting a little weedy.
Yeah, sorry
Yeah,
about that.
okay.
My bad.
But I
No,
mean-
I'm just, for the sake
It's a
of,
good
not that
question.
I'm there, but for the sake of time and Chris's
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, no, I would like to take it up.
okay, well, let me if the committee's okay, one piece of info, I mean, but we'll see whether we're gonna take it up, but first of all, I'll ask whether
It's
it
jurisdiction.
really jurisdictionally belongs over there, okay? In which case I'll do what I did yesterday. I'll just get up on the floor and request that it be moved over. By the way, so just so you know, the way that works is I go to the clerk, I say, I don't think this should be with us. I think it should, well, first of all, I talk to Marcotte, the committee that's gonna be on the receiving end. We don't want them standing up, saying, no way, Rick. Then I talk to Betsy Ann and get her to agree. And then I tell either Jill or Connor. Because you know how Jill repeats when I get up and say that I'd like to move that the Committee on General and Housing be relieved of H whatever, and that the same be assigned to, she already has that up on her script so that she can repeat it. So I will let you know what I found out when I talked to Marcotte. Okay, thank you, Chris.
Appreciate your time.
I mean, if you'd like to sit around
Sorry
here
about that.
and
Thank
watch
you.
us instead of
You
going
know,
down
it's-
to
I'm
education.
sure you deal with a lot of very interesting things, but I think I should probably.
Have a good one.
So now we're at H 552, I think, right?
Yep.
You can represent the president to introduce it.
Did she leave?
Yeah.
No, she's still there.
How can you tell?
She's not?
Krasnow? How can you tell?
Oh,
Emily,
can't-
did you?
Oh,
I
there you are.
can't, it's weird. I can't, like, the screen
Oh.
changed.
Oh, now you replaced Debbie.
You know what it is?
Oh,
Oh,
you
it's
might
never
have something
talks.
on just one. Oh, it's on speaking. That's the display.
Yeah, can you change it?
Can we change it to like,
To all or gallery or something like
For
that?
some reason, it changed completely on my end. Okay, that's better.
Yes,
all right, well, that's better because until we put up the,
because once you share, and.
Okay, so
I
this
wasn't,
is,
oh, sorry.
that's 552. This is a walkthrough. It has been introduced. However, would you like to say anything, Emily,
I'm-
about it?
Yeah, I'm not going to give a formal introduction because I think the walkthrough will speak for it. It was short notice, so I didn't prepare an eloquent intro. But from my own mind and heart on the fly, folks may remember last year we worked on the unpaid leave expansion, which added folks with non-traditional family structures, et cetera, that bill
Yeah.
that was now passed into law, yay. It came to my attention from some folks that so when the bill went, I call it downstairs to the Senate, they added a group of folks that were originally left out, which was pilots. And it came to the attention of some folks, sometimes after bills become law, things rise that we didn't know about. And addition to the pilots, it is my understanding, and Sophie will get into it, that teachers were also left out. So I don't know the full extent. So I'm looking forward to hearing the walkthrough and can answer, but that's the context that it was brought to my attention that after the bill became law, another group of folks was unintentionally left out, like the pilots we added in, or the Senate added in. So that's what I've heard. And the teachers are not happy with that, obviously. And do we have a,
We do.
may have,
We have a
Anyway.
quorum, yes.
we do.
so that's my pull together quick intro and all I know at this point. So I put forward the bill so we could at least have this discussion and hear more if we do decide to take it up from the folks that have been impacted.
Sophie, you want to take it away and explain the context again? I'm a little mystified myself, so.
Remember, we had a reason excluding pilots, but I don't know the reason.
But the bill was just to include non-traditional.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that the bill does,
So how,
why there's a list in the bill. I assumed that the bill just covered, I don't know, everybody.
With H 461, which was the bill that you had last time on parental and family leave, the Vermont statute. It started in this committee, it went over to the Senate, and the Senate made a couple of changes. One of the changes when it got to the Senate was there was a request by one of the unions that represents flight crews that flight crews be included. So flight crews, because they work very, their hours are controlled at the federal level, because you know, I'm sure you've had those situations where you're at the airport and the flight's delayed and it's delayed and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, the crew timed out.
Yeah.
So your flight's not going tonight. So there are very strict rules around how many hours flight crew can work. So there is a special carve out for them under the at the federal level, and the Federal Medical and Family Leave Act, that specifically addresses flight crew and specifically includes them, because they otherwise wouldn't meet the definition of, I think it's 1,250 hours a year. I don't have them all off the top of my head. Yes, at least 1,250 hours of service during a 12-month period. And so airline flight crew have a special service requirement so that they qualify under the FMLA. So they came to the Senate and said, you know, we're covered by the FMLA. We're not covered currently under the Parental and Family Leave Act. We'd like to be. Could you add in a reference to the Family Medical Leave Act, to the State Act, sort of referencing the federal act to say that if we meet the federal requirements for FMLA, then we would meet the state requirements for the PFLA. So that happened. And now my understanding, again, from what Representative Krasnow just said, is the same question came up around teachers, because teachers don't teach, you know, 12 months a year. Their schedule is different. They also have special language under the federal law. And so the request was, could that reference, and I'll just, Mr. Hicks, it's a very small change. Could this add in the reference to teachers under the federal law? And so if they qualify under the federal law, they would then automatically qualify under the state law. So what the change proposed here is that reference to the Code of Federal Regulations that passed in Act 32. I went ahead and added airline flight crew, so people like, what are all these numbers in here? They would know what they related to. And then it would add in 29 CFR section 825 dot 110C3, full-time teachers, and then the definition of what a full-time teacher is under federal law. And so they would now be eligible to be covered under the state Parental and Family Leave Act, which they were not previously, but they were covered under the federal act, and they're asking, could they be covered under the state act?
Oh,
Please.
Does the, is in that definition of teachers, I'm guessing it does not include like other staff that paraeducators or cafeteria workers or any of the
Right.
other staff that work
So the
full-time at
definition of a
school and
teacher-
months of the year.
The definition of a teacher is a teacher or employee employed in an instructional capacity, or instructional employee means an employed principally in an instructional capacity by an educational agency or school whose principal function is to teach and instruct students in a class, a small group, or an individual setting, and includes athletic coaches, driving instructors, and special education assistants, such as signers for the hearing impaired. The term does not include teacher assistants or aides who do not have as their principal function actual teaching or instructing, nor auxiliary personnel such as counselors, psychologists, curriculum specialists, cafeteria workers, maintenance workers, bus drivers, or other primarily non-instructional employees.
I don't like
So-
that.
Well,
So that's the federal definition.
Yeah,
of a
yeah,
teacher.
yeah, no, yeah,
well,
yeah.
so I'm assuming, I would assume that if they're not teachers, that they are already under other labor law. And that our bill would probably, it
Would
is
it-
already captured. It sounds like we're looking for the stragglers that are covered by.
No, because they wouldn't be
Who's-
12-month employees. That's why our teachers and pilots don't
Yeah, that,
qualify.
maybe you better, let's go back a step for a minute. Does the Family Leave Act, its main sections that give the right to family leave, the state act,
The parental family.
the Parental and Family
Right.
Leave Act. Does it limit it to employees who are a certain number of hours or full-time or, I mean, why do we have to deal with all these exceptions?
Yes, to be eligible, you do have to have worked a certain amount of time and for, the statute will try to here. You have to have been with the employer a certain amount of time and you need to have, worked a certain number of hours for that employer. Make sure I'm not sharing. Okay, so I'm flipping through this.
That's what I didn't understand. I didn't understand why.
I understand why.
Why, I mean, I'm seeing we're having to catch all these people,
Yeah.
and so I wanted to know what the base rule is.
So these were people that were not previously covered, historically have not been covered by our state law. I think it was
Because-
just the fact, because they didn't qualify, they didn't meet the definition. And I think the fact that with what the
So it
General
doesn't-
Assembly did last session where they weren't expanding, they weren't generally making changing the number of hours or whatever
Right.
time you
No,
can take
no,
off.
I know
What they
that.
were
Definition of
doing is
employee.
they were just changing like who a family member
Yeah,
was.
I understand. I
More
remember.
expensive.
Yeah.
But
But I think it then, you know, as I think as Representative Kreisnau noted, once that then gets attention, people are like, oh, well, why
Right.
can't we be covered as well?
Well-
And the fact that there was this particular reach out to include airline
Right.
crew specifically under the federal FMLA, I think is, and again, Representative Kreisnau will know, but that probably triggered.
so,
Yeah, and this is again a policy choice if we want to continue down this road. And the folks who have asked for that understand that this likely wouldn't be a standalone bill. So I was going to propose that we continue to think about this, and then as we may receive other labor-related
Right.
bills, if we
Yeah.
want to talk about it again. But again, it is a policy choice. But as Sophie mentioned, it did after the Senate added another group. That's typically what happens, right? People start to say, "Hey, what about me?" And anyway, so that's why I put the bill forward.
Yeah.
So the definition here is, employee means a person in consideration of has been continuously employed by the same employer for a period of 1 year for an average of at least 30 hours per week or meets the service requirements. Again, that's the language that we're looking at changing here, right? That's the flight crews there, 29 CFR 825-801. So yeah, there is that requirement. So again, if you've only worked a limited number of weeks during the year,
Yeah.
your chances are you're not going to average at least 30 hours a week.
yes,
I think I recall us having dialogue last year and in previous years around just around language, around who to include. And then this is exactly what happens when you start adding other groups, that where does it stop? Right? Because then it's going to be like, oh, then it's a teacher. Then it's like, well, who else is going to come? And I feel like, I'm not saying I don't want to take this up. I'm just saying I want to err on the side of caution because we're always going to be excluding someone. And I feel like if we determine the definitions around employee and work requirements, that feels okay. I feel like putting in specific job titles and roles feels less okay to me because
Put them all in.
yeah, that just feels like scope creep a little bit, and I feel like expanding the definitions of family member and extended families and, and alternative families and all the different kinds of families we have. Great. Love that. Defining employee, and work hour requirement, great, love that. I feel like when we get into adding specific job titles and roles, I feel like maybe it should be something different around having those job titles be reworded to fall into that work, that employment category, as opposed to adding them to, do you understand what I'm saying? I just feel like it.
So in other words, to change the definition to catch them rather than add them specifically. in.
Right, I just feel like we're gonna we'll end up back here next year, right? So like, let's say we pass this. And then it'll be next year, I'd be like, oh, well, when we added the teachers, then the artists decided they would, or whatever group, right?
And I understand, and I'm not trying to redirect the conversation, but again, if we take this bill up, I think those are the types of conversation we would have, but we haven't even heard testimony from the people impacted to say why they're different or who they are. I get the slippery slope of continuing to add different names, but I really feel like that's more of a place we should talk about if we decide to even take testimony. So as a walkthrough, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're just keeping us in line. That's all right.
No, I appreciate the conversation. I'm just saying,
good.
like, I'd like to hear I haven't even heard from a teacher. I haven't heard from organizations to even hear why they feel that way. The Senate added, and so I would just prefer if we could wait to discuss the merits of why or not why.
Sophie, what is your sense for how many different types of employees are covered by a definition that is elsewhere? Is there a lot of them? Are we talking just a handful? Or are we talking?
I think one possible limiting thing would be, and again, it wouldn't answer what Representative Dodge is concerned about, but one, as you go out, like down a slippery slope, would be to sweep in any other special groups that are covered by the federal FMLA and saying, oh, it's okay for those to now be included in the Parental and Family Leave Act. But I think I might have the list here. So there are some, right, the 12 months an employer must have been employed by an employer need not be consecutive. Then there are just different limits. And again, these things are so complex because again, you're trying to sort of answer every question, like, well, what about this? What about that? But under the federal law, there are just all kinds of exceptions. So, I mean, that might be one way to do it. If you're covered by the FMLA, if you qualify for a special exception, then you'd be covered under the PFLA because presumably at the federal level, they've concluded that even though those employees have unusual schedules, they should otherwise be covered, but it does explicitly exclude, those outside of the class.
Same employer period, 1 year for an average of at least 30 hours a week, or is covered under the FMLA. Or
Right.
defined by FMLA.
Or, yes.
So that is all of those weird categories.
Well, I do think what this goes to is for you just to make a note to yourself, following what Emily was saying. We're not really debating the substance of the bill today, but I do think this is a valuable conversation because it alerts you, Sophie, as to issues you're going to want to look at and report back to us if we do take it off the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clear that the two exceptions we're talking about are exceptions that aren't trying to cover everybody who's part-time. They're aimed at what we think of as full-time occupations, but which for physical or traditional reasons don't make the 30-hour. And, how you do that effectively, legally, it could be by reference to the federal statute, could be trying something else, could be just listing exemptions and knowing that we might have another one next year. So we'll talk more about that if we decide to take it off the wall. Emily, you made reference, we have to decide kind of like pretty soon, we're going to have to start deciding what we're going to spend our time on. Did you make a reference earlier to the fact that you think there are other bills coming along the line that would be enough related to this that we'd want to merge them or otherwise get them under one one bill or consider them together or something? Or
Well,
you
yeah, I
just,
mean-
as a general matter, you want to
It's
wait a
both.
little?
I'm not a lawyer, but I am, and I can't say without knowing particularly what's germane and not germane, but we have a number of, I believe, Chair, we had discussed that we may be taking up more testimony on some different labor bills at some point,
Yeah.
that we have. And then Sophie alluded to the fact that there's a Senate labor bill, so perhaps after crossover. But even though I am a sponsor of this bill, I made it clear to the folks and to others that this wasn't going to be probably a time of the standalone and take a lot of the committee's time at this point. And so I think the best course of action would be to kind of just we had a good discussion and continue to think about that this exists and that kind of wait to see what else happens.
Do you think, one thing that occurred to me, and I'm wondering what you think about it. We've talked about, some of us, whether we ought to be taking testimony sort of generically on how the Parental and Family Leave Act is working as it's implemented by the administration. And
Right.
is this an opportunity to do that? Should we combine them, et cetera? I'm just putting that as a placeholder to think about,
I think
okay?
that's great, because then we can get both questions. How's
Right.
it going, and would this affect you greatly?
Right, well,
Yeah.
and also larger questions about, the insurance policy, is it being used? What is it, is it broad enough in its coverage, et cetera? That's something, Sophie, that we have talked about. And so I'm putting you on notice. You understand what the issue would be, which is sort of a deeper dive on how is the
Parental family leave act working?
yeah, and how is it working through the insurance policy?
Oh, is that more to do with the earned sick time?
Oh, that's right.
Because this is unpaid.
Oh, I'm
This is-
sorry.
Oh, no.
This is unpaid.
Yeah,
This is unpaid.
Yeah.
okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
I got mixed up. Okay. Anything else? Other questions?
I'm grateful that this is on our radar at least.
Okay, so
get
we now have covered everything that we have to cover today.
Great.
It is 2:20.
Yeah.
Is there any other comment, matter that people want to discuss before we adjourn?
No, I just want to clarify. I just want to clarify my statement earlier so that it's not misconstrued or misinterpreted. And it's not that I did not want to include educators. I support
No,
educators.
I think that was clear.
Okay, I'm not saying they should not be included. I'm just saying, is there a different way to do it? Was what I was asking. I don't want people like, she's against the teachers. No, that's not what this is.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Well, everyone, those who are watching us online, we are about to adjourn. I hope you all have a good weekend.